A chilling silence descended upon the vast, unforgiving wilderness of the anarchist mountain region in 1992, a silence that would swallow 6 vibrant lives whole. It was a summer that promised adventure, camaraderie, and the simple joys of nature for a group of young friends. They were eager to escape the mundane, to trade the everyday for the thrill of the rugged outdoors. They set out with anticipation, their laughter echoing through the dense forests, unaware that their journey would lead not to triumph, but to a baffling disappearance that would haunt a nation for 14 agonizing years. The story begins, as many tragedies do, with ordinary people embarking on an extraordinary journey, a journey from which they would never return. Their plan was simple: a week of hiking, fishing, and camping, a chance to reconnect with nature and each other. They meticulously packed their gear, each item a testament to their preparedness and enthusiasm. Maps were consulted, routes discussed, and provisions carefully chosen. The trailhead, a familiar landmark to seasoned hikers, marked the last known point of their conscious entry into the wild. What truly transpired in those early days of their expedition remains a grim enigma, shrouded in the impenetrable veil of the anarchist mountain. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, with no word, no sign, no trace. The initial concern quickly blossomed into outright alarm, then into a desperate, all-consuming fear. Search parties were mobilized, a massive undertaking that saw hundreds of volunteers and professionals combing every inch of the treacherous terrain. Helicopters crisscrossed the skies, their powerful beams piercing the dense canopy, while ground teams meticulously scoured ravines, rivers, and remote clearings. Every rock was turned, every cave explored, every whisper of the wind scrutinized for an answer. But the mountain, with its ancient forests and hidden depths, held its secrets close. The only sounds were the mournful cries of search dogs, the rustling of leaves in the wind, and the heavy, anxious breathing of those who desperately sought answers. The families, gripped by an unbearable anguish, clung to slivers of hope that dwindled with each passing day. They walked the same paths their loved ones might have taken, their minds replaying imagined scenarios, each more terrifying than the last. Was it an accident, a wrong turn, a sudden violent storm, or something far more sinister? The wilderness can be a cruel mistress, beautiful yet indifferent, capable of both breathtaking splendor and unimaginable terror. The missing hikers became a national preoccupation, their faces plastered on milk cartons and news broadcasts. Their story resonated with a primal fear, the vulnerability of humanity against the raw power of nature, and the chilling possibility of simply vanishing without a trace. The authorities, baffled by the complete lack of evidence, eventually scaled back the active search, though the case remained open, a cold file in the archives of unsolved mysteries. For 14 years, the anarchist mountain kept its counsel, its vastness serving as a silent tomb, a constant reminder of the lives it had claimed. The families, though, burdened by the weight of their loss, never truly gave up. They held on to a fragile thread of hope, a desperate belief that one day the mountain would relinquish its secrets and their loved ones would finally be found. They understood that the passage of time did not diminish the pain, but rather deepened the ache of the unknown. The unanswered questions gnawed at their souls, a relentless torment in the quiet moments of their lives. The mountains, stoic and unchanging, watched as years slowly turned into more than a decade, preserving the mystery beneath a blanket of snow and dense foliage. The tale of the 6 vanished hikers became a local legend, a cautionary whisper carried on the wind, a somber reminder of the wilderness's enduring power. The world moved on, but for those directly affected, time had simply stopped on that fateful summer day in 1992. Then a discovery of unimaginable significance shattered the prolonged silence. 14 years after the hikers vanished, a team of geological surveyors working deep within a previously uncharted section of the Anarchist Mountain stumbled upon something profoundly unsettling. Their sonar equipment, usually used to map subterranean rock formations, detected an anomalous structure buried deep beneath the earth. It was too symmetrical, too distinct from the natural chaos of the mountain's interior to be anything other than man-made. The initial readings were perplexing, suggesting a cavity, an enclosed space that shouldn't exist. Curiosity, then a growing sense of foreboding, compelled them to investigate further. What they unearthed transcended all expectations and plunged the cold case into a chilling new dimension. With the precision of archaeologists uncovering an ancient tomb, they began to excavate. Layer by layer, the earth yielded its secrets, revealing not just a structure, but something horrifyingly familiar. It was a cabin, small and weathered, yet unmistakably a dwelling. What shocked them to their core was not merely its presence, but its condition. It was found sealed completely underground, as if swallowed whole by the mountain itself. The discovery sent ripples of shock and disbelief throughout the tight-knit community and beyond. How could a cabin, seemingly intact, have become entombed beneath tons of earth without anyone knowing? The sheer scale of the geological event required to achieve such a feat defied logical explanation, hinting at a seismic shift or an ancient forgotten landslide that had effectively erased it from the surface world. As the excavation continued, a sense of dread permeated the air. Was this connected to the vanished hikers? The possibility, however remote, was too profound to ignore. Forensic teams were immediately dispatched, their presence marking a pivotal shift from a geological survey to a full-blown criminal investigation. The scene was meticulously documented, every grain of soil, every exposed timber treated as potential evidence. The entrance to the cabin, once cleared of the suffocating earth, revealed a door still shut tight, a silent guardian of whatever horrors lay within. The moment of entry was fraught with tension, a collective held breath. What awaited them beyond that threshold? Would it be empty, a mere relic of a forgotten past? Or would it finally provide the answers that had eluded everyone for so long, answers to a mystery that had festered for nearly a decade and a half? The opening of that cabin door was not just the breach of a physical barrier. It was the tearing open of old wounds, the reawakening of a dormant nightmare. The cabin's interior, miraculously preserved by its subterranean burial, presented a tableau frozen in time. Dust motes danced in the artificial light of the investigators' lamps, illuminating a scene that sent a shiver down every spine. There, within the confines of that cramped space, were the skeletal remains of 6 individuals. The initial confirmation was a punch to the gut for everyone involved. It was them, the 6 hikers whose disappearance had become a local legend, had finally been found. Their bodies, though reduced to bone, still bore the faint imprints of their last moments, lying in positions that suggested a desperate, futile struggle, or perhaps a sudden, overwhelming event. It was clear this was no ordinary hiking accident, no simple wrong turn. The manner of their death, and more critically, their burial within a sealed cabin, painted a far darker picture. The air inside the cabin was thick with the scent of decay and damp earth, a morbid perfume that clung to every surface. Personal effects lay scattered undisturbed for 14 years. Backpacks, water bottles, a worn compass, and a tattered map. These were not just objects, they were poignant relics, silent witnesses to a tragedy. Among them, a single tarnished silver pendant lay near one of the skeletons, its intricate design still visible, a cruel reminder of a life abruptly cut short. The revelation that the cabin was sealed from the outside introduced an unsettling layer of premeditation. This wasn't a natural occurrence. The earth had not simply swallowed them whole. Someone or something had deliberately trapped them inside. The implications were staggering. Was this a deliberate act of murder? A macabre tomb carefully constructed by human hands? Or was it something else? Something even more unfathomable? The investigators, seasoned by years of confronting human depravity, found themselves grappling with a mystery that defied conventional understanding. The initial joyous relief of finding the missing quickly morphed into a profound sense of dread. The silence of the mountain had finally been broken, but the truth it revealed was far more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. The search for closure had only just begun, but the path forward was now illuminated by a grim, undeniable certainty. The 6 hikers had not merely vanished. They had been purposefully interred, their final resting place a meticulously sealed tomb beneath the earth. The initial examination of the remains and the cabin's interior offered a fragmented, chilling narrative. The forensic team, working with painstaking care, noted several critical details. While the skeletons bore no immediate signs of violent trauma, consistent with common murder weapons like knives or bullets, the positions of the bodies suggested extreme distress. Some were huddled together, as if seeking comfort or protection in their final moments, while others lay sprawled, indicative of a struggle against an unseen force or an agonizing collapse. The air quality inside the sealed cabin was immediately analyzed. The readings were stark. Oxygen levels were critically low, far below what was necessary to sustain human life, and concentrations of carbon dioxide were alarmingly high. This confirmed the most immediate cause of death: asphyxiation. The hikers had slowly, agonizingly suffocated inside their subterranean prison. But why were they there? And who had sealed them in? These questions loomed large, eclipsing the grim certainty of their demise. The cabin itself became the primary piece of evidence. Its construction, while rudimentary, was robust, clearly built for long-term habitation in the wilderness. The door, found secured from the outside with heavy timbers and earth, spoke volumes about the calculated malice involved. This was no accidental entrapment. It was a deliberate act of sealing, a cruel burial. No signs of forced entry were found on the door from the inside, suggesting the hikers had either been forced in or entered willingly before being trapped. However, the lack of struggle marks on the inside of the door presented a disturbing paradox. Why hadn't they tried to escape more vigorously if they were being sealed alive? Unless, of course, they were already incapacitated. The forensic team also discovered a rusted, primitive-looking arrowhead embedded in one of the cabin's interior walls. It was an anachronism, a relic from another era, seemingly out of place in a modern wilderness cabin. Its presence sparked immediate speculation. Was it a decoration or a grim warning? Its historical significance, initially unclear, would later prove to be a crucial, unsettling piece of the puzzle. The arrowhead's material and craftsmanship suggested an origin centuries old, far predating modern habitation in the region. This added another layer of bewildering complexity to an already unfathomable crime. Was this a random act of violence, or something rooted in a deeper, darker history? The narrative shifted dramatically from a simple missing persons case to a complex, multi-layered murder investigation, hinting at motives and perpetrators far more twisted than anyone had initially conceived. The profound implication of the sealed cabin, that someone had deliberately trapped and murdered these 6 young individuals, cast a long, dark shadow over the anarchist mountain. The wilderness, once seen as a place of natural beauty and adventure, now loomed as a silent accomplice to an unspeakable horror. The discovery of the cabin, while providing answers to the where, only deepened the chilling mystery of the why and the who. The investigators knew they were dealing with a perpetrator of extraordinary cunning and malevolence, someone who had gone to extreme lengths to conceal their heinous crime. This was not a quick, impulsive act, but a deliberate, calculated scheme designed to erase all traces, to turn living, breathing individuals into forgotten specters. The sealed cabin, therefore, became not just a crime scene, but a chilling testament to human cruelty and the enduring power of a secret kept buried for 14 long, silent years. The investigation, now a grim race against time and the fading memories of a long-past summer, turned its focus to the immediate surroundings of the cabin. The Geological Survey team had noted an unusual pattern of earthworks in the area, suggesting that the cabin had not simply been buried by a natural landslide. Instead, it appeared to have been covered, carefully and deliberately, by a massive amount of soil and rock, potentially disguised to appear as a natural formation. This extraordinary effort implied a deep understanding of the local terrain and a meticulous, almost ritualistic approach to concealment. Aerial surveys were conducted, revealing subtle anomalies in the forest canopy and ground contours that had previously gone unnoticed, hidden by the passage of 14 years of natural growth and erosion. What had been dismissed as typical wilderness topography now looked eerily deliberate. Investigators meticulously combed the area for any additional clues, for anything that might shed light on the events leading up to the entombment. They unearthed a primitive, crudely fashioned antenna, partially buried and rusted, near the cabin's perimeter. It was unlike any modern communication device, its construction suggesting improvisation and a specific, perhaps clandestine purpose. Its discovery raised immediate questions. Was it used by the hikers for emergency communication, or was it connected to their captors, a tool for surveillance or signaling? The materials, upon closer inspection, appeared to be scavenged, fashioned from discarded metals and insulated wire. It was a stark, tangible link to human presence beyond the official records, a silent testament to activity in a place that should have been pristine wilderness. Further examination of the surrounding area led to an even more perplexing find. A series of carefully placed, ancient-looking stone markers, almost completely obscured by overgrown foliage. These markers, unlike typical trailblazes, formed an irregular, almost symbolic pattern around the cabin's hidden location. They were weathered and moss-covered, suggesting they had been there for a very long time, possibly centuries. Their presence hinted at a deeper, almost mystical connection to the land, an unsettling overlay of ancient practices on a modern tragedy. Were these markers coincidental, or did they hold some forgotten significance, perhaps linked to the very reason the cabin was chosen as a tomb? The juxtaposition of the modern crime and these ancient symbols created an unsettling dissonance, suggesting a confluence of timelines, a collision of past and present horrors. The investigators were now faced with a tantalizing yet terrifying possibility. Was this isolated incident a unique crime, or was it somehow tied to a darker, more enduring history of the anarchist mountain? The idea that these remote, pristine landscapes held secrets far older and more profound than a single missing persons case began to take root. The mountain, once an impassive backdrop, now seemed to pulsate with unspoken histories, with echoes of forgotten rituals and ancient warnings. The true horror was beginning to reveal itself, not just as a singular act of violence, but as a potential thread woven into a much larger, more disturbing tapestry of the region's past. Each discovery, each excavated artifact, served to deepen the mystery, pulling the investigators further into a labyrinth of unanswered questions, where the lines between accident, murder, and ancient folklore began to blur, forcing them to confront the possibility of a truth far more terrifying and complex than they could have ever imagined. The mountain, it seemed, was finally ready to speak, but its story was whispered in cryptic clues and ancient symbols, demanding a new kind of interpretation, a deeper understanding of its long-held secrets. As the forensic investigation deepened, the true horror of the hiker's final moments began to emerge. Though the primary cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation, a more granular analysis of the skeletal remains unveiled subtle, yet disturbing indications of profound stress. Bone marrow samples, surprisingly well preserved in the sealed environment, showed elevated levels of cortisol and adrenaline, consistent with extreme fear and prolonged suffering. The absence of major skeletal trauma had initially led to the assumption of a relatively swift, albeit agonizing death by suffocation. However, microfractures found in the small bones of the hands and feet of two victims suggested desperate attempts to claw at the cabin walls or floor, a futile struggle for escape that ultimately failed. These tiny, almost imperceptible injuries painted a vivid, heartbreaking picture of their final terrifying hours, trapped and slowly dying. The chilling discovery of the rusted arrowhead embedded in the cabin wall took on a new, more sinister significance. Forensic anthropologists determined that the arrowhead was indeed ancient, likely of indigenous origin, dating back many centuries. Its presence in a modern cabin, combined with its seemingly deliberate placement, sparked a new line of inquiry. Was it a warning, a symbolic gesture, or a direct, albeit anachronistic, weapon used in some unknown conflict? Further analysis confirmed that the arrowhead had been driven into the wooden wall with considerable force, not casually placed. This was not a decoration. The experts consulted various indigenous communities, hoping to unravel the cultural context of such an artifact. While the specific meaning remained elusive, several elders spoke of ancient territorial disputes and places marked as taboo, where spirits lingered and dark events had transpired. This brought a chilling, almost supernatural dimension to the investigation, suggesting that the crime might be rooted in something far older and more complex than a simple criminal act. The presence of the primitive antenna also yielded crucial insights. Upon careful dismantling, investigators found that it was not a receiver, but a crude yet effective transmitter. Its design indicated it was capable of broadcasting a very specific, low-frequency signal over a short range, not for emergency calls, but for point-to-point communication or a localized warning system. This implied that someone was actively using or monitoring the area around the cabin even after its burial, or that it was part of an elaborate trap. The sheer ingenuity, coupled with the antiquated design, hinted at a perpetrator who was both isolated from modern technology and intimately familiar with the land, perhaps even reclusive. The implications were staggering. Was a solitary figure living off the grid responsible for this meticulously planned entombment? Someone who viewed the modern world and perhaps these hikers as an intrusion? The more evidence that surfaced, the more the case veered away from a straightforward criminal investigation and into the unsettling territory of historical grievances, ancient warnings, and a reclusive, almost mythical, antagonist. The anarchist mountain was not just a crime scene. It was a stage where a modern tragedy was playing out against a backdrop of ancient, unresolved conflicts. The sealed cabin, therefore, transformed into something more than a mere tomb. It became a nexus of forgotten histories, a place where the past had reached out to claim the present, leaving behind a chilling tapestry of despair and unanswered questions. The true nature of the evil at play seemed to run far deeper than any initial assumption, rooted perhaps in the very soil of the mountain itself. As the investigation reached its zenith, a chilling narrative began to coalesce, one that transcended simple criminal intent and hinted at something far more profound and terrifying. The reclusive individual, identified only as the Sentinel by investigators due to his deep connection to the land and the ancient markers, emerged as the prime suspect. This individual, whose existence was initially based on local legends and fragmented historical accounts of a hermit-like figure guarding ancient tribal lands, had now become a tangible, albeit elusive, threat. The meticulous sealing of the cabin, the primitive but effective transmission device, and the symbolic placement of the ancient arrowhead all pointed to a single, highly resourceful, and deeply disturbed individual operating outside the bounds of conventional society. This was not a random act of violence, but a calculated, almost ritualistic internment. The motive, though still shrouded in mystery, appeared to be rooted in a zealous, almost fanatical protection of the ancestral lands from perceived trespassers. The Sentinel believed the hikers were desecrating sacred ground, and their fate was a grim punishment, a macabre warning to others. The use of ancient indigenous artifacts, particularly the arrowhead, was not merely coincidental. It was a deliberate act of cultural appropriation, a distorted reinterpretation of historical grievances used to justify a heinous crime. The Sentinel had weaponized history, twisting ancient symbols into instruments of terror. The hikers, innocent and unaware, had stumbled into a territory guarded by an unhinged zealot, a self-appointed protector of a forgotten past. The final piece of the puzzle, however, came from the most unexpected source: a hidden message found etched into the cabin's interior ceiling. Barely visible beneath years of accumulated dust and grime, The inscription was crudely carved, likely by one of the victims in their dying moments, a desperate attempt to leave a final testament. The message was simple, yet devastating. He watched us die. This final chilling declaration confirmed the most terrifying suspicion. The hikers were not merely trapped, they were observed. The sentinel had not only sealed their fate, but had remained present, a silent, malevolent spectator to their slow, agonizing demise. This revelation painted a picture of unfathomable cruelty, a level of depravity that shook even the most hardened investigators. The motive was not just territorial protection, it was also a perverse gratification in wielding ultimate power over human life. The anarchist mountain, once a symbol of wild beauty, was now forever tainted by the memory of this unspeakable act, a silent witness to a horror that transcended time and sanity. The case of the 6 vanished hikers, solved after 14 years, left an indelible mark, a somber reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the most beautiful and seemingly tranquil corners of the world, a darkness capable of transforming a pristine wilderness into a tomb and a human into a monster. The mountain, in its silent grandeur, would forever whisper the tale of the sealed cabin, a chilling legend born from the confluence of ancient grievances and modern-day madness.